Arkansas's Tom Cotton has been a key player in these immigration talks, and our very own Drew Petrimo caught up with him on Capitol Hill to discuss his role in the debate.
Some people tell the story, things were rolling along to consensus, and then Senator Cotton comes in and kind of throws a wrench in things. What do you say to that criticism?
No, that's not really the way this has happened at all. I mean, some Republicans and most Democrats just view the immigration issue differently than Donald Trump does. But he won the election, and he won it in no small part because of his views on immigration. He wants to control illegal immigration and make sure our legal immigration system puts the interest of American workers first. So while we share those views, President Trump's views go back to the very beginning of his campaign and, frankly, well before he was ever running for president. So we're allies on that issue in most regards, but President Trump has very fixed views on immigration.
When it comes to the former beneficiaries of the DACA protections, do you understand the anxiousness that they have, that they came forward and gave their names to the government, and now there's this deadline, and it seems like Congress can't agree on a way to find the path forward?
I do, and I want to find that path. I want to give legal protection to the DACA population because they're people who are brought here as minors through no fault of their own. And I think most Arkansans, most Americans want to give them that legal protection in a generous and humane way. But we have to be responsible about it. Well, it will no doubt create more incentives for more illegal immigration in the future. That's why we have to secure our southern border. And it would allow them to bring more of their extended family members into the country, parents and siblings, on out to grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. And I don't think that's right either, to jump the line in front of so many people who've been waiting in line. So on the one hand, if we give legal protections to the DACA population, which I support, we also need to secure our southern border and end extended family chain migration. I think that's a reasonable and responsible compromise.
The president seemed to advocate for a pretty narrow approach, even in this so-called phase one, where it would be some sort of a deal for the DACA recipients, maybe some border security to prevent the incentivization of those type of people. It seems like people on your side, on the more maybe hardline side, are complicating it a little bit more by trying to bring in other issues and make this more broad.
No, well, the president's always stressed the need to end chain migration as well, because if we're going to give this legal protection to this population of illegal immigrants who are brought here through no fault of their own, we can't have them turn around and get legal status and ultimately citizenship for their extended family members. That's not fair to people who've been waiting in line and doing the right thing. That's why I say that's a relatively narrow compromise. You know, the legal protections for the DACA population on the one hand, and then on the other hand, security at our border and chain migration. There's lots of other issues related to immigration. For example, temporary guest workers. We're not going to cover that in this legislation because that is too big. That is I think, too much of a lift for Congress. What we need to do is focus narrowly on solving the problem for the DACA population, but also responsibly controlling the negative consequences of that decision.
Given the past history of Congress's inability to reach a deal on immigration, what would your message to the people that were formerly protected by this program that are pretty pessimistic that their protections are going to be extended by the deadline or there's going to be a deal cut?
Well, I hope that by keeping the scope of the legislation narrow, simply giving legal protection for the DACA population, then controlling for that decision's negative side effects, securing our border and ending chain migration, we'll be able to overcome the failures of the past Congresses. You're right that 3 times in the last 12 years, Congress has tried to solve every problem in immigration, legalize 12 million people, and the border, and all guest worker programs, and all workplace enforcement. I think we would fail if we tried to do something that big, and it would take much too long. A narrow solution is the best solution.
I wanted to go back to this meeting with the president that's gotten so much discussion about. I know you're probably tired of talking about it, but there were reportedly some derogatory terms made by the president. It's been talked about ad nauseum in the media since then. Looking back on it, do you have any regrets of the way you handled it? Some people have said that you may have lost credibility with the way that you spoke about what happened in that meeting.
No, I don't. Everything I said was an accurate portrayal of what happened in the meeting. I will say that there was strong language used and tempers may have flared a little bit. But the point that the president was making is we shouldn't have an immigration system that rewards people for where they're from or who they're related to. It should be an immigration system that treats people for who they are. That's the quintessential American system, treating people as individuals, equally entitled to respect and dignity, whether they come from Nigeria or they come from Norway.
Did you feel a responsibility or inclination to protect the president, cover for the president, stick up for the president when other people were attacking him because of that meeting?
Senator Durbin misportrayed the tone and the tenor of that meeting in a way that hurt America's image abroad, and I didn't think that should have happened. It certainly should not have been grossly misrepresented as it was, and I felt as someone who was in the meeting and could be a first-hand eyewitness to it, I could say that the president's statements are being misrepresented.
The way that you view immigration policy, how much of it is economic? How much of it is it a moral argument? And even is there a political argument that comes into it as well?
Well, I think we need an immigration policy that protects the interest of Americans. We should have an immigration policy that serves the interest of those people who are here today as citizens, whether they just took the oath of citizenship last week or whether their ancestors came over on the Mayflower. Too often, politicians in Washington talk about an immigration policy through the lens of illegal immigrants or through the lens of foreigners. I understand why most people around the world, especially in developing world countries, would want to come to the United States. The question is it in the interest of the United States? Is it going to help our economy? Is it going to help create new jobs here? Is it going to increase wages? Or is it going to do the opposite? Is it going to take jobs away from working class Arkansans, and is it going to drive down the wages of working class Arkansans?
I bring in the political aspect of it because these are hundreds of thousands of young Hispanics. It's not necessarily been a great demographic for the Republican Party. Does the politics of this, of having people, if there's a path to citizenship, that they will eventually be voters and that could be potentially bad for the Republican Party, does that come into play at all?
Not at all. In fact, I would hope to appeal to those new citizens, just like I hope to appeal for the votes of every citizen. And if a Republican president and a Republican Congress is responsible for creating legal protections for this group of people who are in this situation through no fault of their own, I think that would be something the Republican Party should be proud of. And in fact, we should go out and campaign more aggressively for the votes of Hispanic voters. One thing I would say, though, is that the immigration issue is not the only issue on which Hispanic voters cast their ballots. I mean, that's been demonstrated over the last 3 elections.